I think we're in for the next 6 to 12 months are going to be a grind. Like here we are talking about 14-hour days, and some people are listening to that saying, not me.
Well, here, it's going to be so hard. You're going to have to make double the calls you ever made.
The reality is I could stand over someone's shoulder and they're going to ramp it up. But if I walk away, the likelihood of them of maintaining that same degree of effort may be much, much lower.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Broker's Desk. This is a brainchild of the great TP, Taylor Prince, and I. We've owned a couple of real estate brokerages, so we know that historically speaking, Taylor, I don't even remember what was his name at our Chick was one of our first brokers, and he was just that old wise sage sitting in the corner, and he just knew everything. And so it was like whenever we had a question, we go to the Broker's Desk. And so as we were thinking about firing up the podcast, and really we've both been consuming a lot of content. Mine's more golf related, yours is more business related, so your content is of significant higher value. We're like, let's call it the Broker's Desk, and let's bring in absolute killers, people who we look up to, people whose advice we go to when we're like, hey man, how do we tackle this problem? And so our very first guest on the Broker's Desk podcast is Brian Gubernick. Brian, thanks for joining us, man. So tell everybody, those who, the four people in the real estate industry that don't know who you are, give them the Cliff's Notes version of who Brian Gubernick is.
I think there's probably a little bit more than four. I think what you're saying is, Brian, you've been doing this for so damn long that you probably crossed paths with most everybody in the industry. And I think that might be true. I'm 17 years in now, 18 years in. First couple of years focusing on investment, past 16 years though, as a real estate salesperson, someone who built a big team, built that team, brought it to different states, bought a couple brokerages, got in the title, got in the mortgage, and on and on and on. Like a lot of us, right? Where you start as a successful agent and then you earn the right to additional opportunities. And so I think for me, I've been very fortunate. I've had a few more W's than L's. And today I spend the vast majority of my time in two spots. Number one, I'm the chief real estate officer for a company called Place. And number two, I run a mastermind with my partner, Ben Kinney, called Metrics Masterminds. And that's where I spend most of my time in addition to investment and other passive investment opportunities. And so real estate investment and other things. So been around a little bit though, seen a few different markets, and hopefully can share a few things today that'll help all the listeners.
Well, and I've got a quick little a Brian G story. So I got into real estate. I think I'm exact same as you, 2005, been like 18 years. But the first time I ever heard your name was right. I don't remember exact year, but it was sometime like 2008 when the market was doing weird stuff. And there was a new emerging type of property that was hitting the market called a short sale. And you can tell me the statistics here, Brian, but I'm pretty sure at one point, I don't know if it was 2009, 10, 11, you were like the number one most closed short sale transactions in America, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, we close a lot of short sales. And Taylor, real quick, like story on that. I was an investor, or thought I was an investor in Phoenix. When you don't know what you want to do with your life, you become a real estate investor. That's just what.
Yeah, if you're in Vegas, you'd be working for Thunder from Down Under. But yeah, go ahead.
Right. So Thunder from Down Under is a Vegas thing. Real estate is what we do in Phoenix. And so I got into real estate investment, and for the first couple of years was crushing it. Right. Not because I knew anything. I knew nothing. I was just riding the market. And then one day the market changed. Now, of course, it didn't change in one day, but I was so stupid, I guess is the best way to, like, I didn't know what I was studying. I didn't know what I was doing. And so the market pivoted and I found myself upside down on an awful lot of flips. And I went to my bank and I told them, I'm sorry, I can't pay you. And they said, great. What do you want to do? And I said, I don't know, but if I can't pay, like, this property is about to be yours. And that was the negotiation. And like 48 hours later, I got a letter from them that said, hey, we take less on this property than what's owed. And I went through that on one of my properties. Went through it on another 5 or 6, lost 2 or 3 to foreclosure, and said, okay, now what? well, I guess I'll get into real estate sales. This was 2006, 2007. And just so happens that of the first 15 people I talked to, 14 of them were upside down on their home. And so the short sale business started to take shape. The first 5 or 6 short sales of that business were my own. That's how I learned it.
So let me ask you this. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's funny. It's one of those things, like in hindsight, it was real painful in the moment, but not to be too cliche, but it was one of those moments where like that massive failure created millions of dollars of commission income for me.
Right.
And so that became my business model. And soon enough, we were doing hundreds around Metro Phoenix, but we took it to all these other states, and we started third-party negotiating around the country as well. So I don't know if anyone kept record of this sort of thing, who was doing the most short sales, but we had to be right up there, thousands over the course of time.
You're in the short sale Hall of Fame, which is great.
That's a good one to be in, yeah. Right next to the REO Hall of Fame.
Yeah, exactly. Right next to the Loan Modification Hall of Fame. What are you a Phoenix guy originally? Like, did you grow up there? Did you go to college? What was your pre-real estate history?
Yeah, my family moved from Pennsylvania, from Wilkes-Barre is where I was born, in Pennsylvania, when I was 8 years old. So I grew up in Phoenix. I mean, I was born in Pennsylvania, but I've been here since I was 8. And Vegas kind of similar in that it's really grown over the past couple decades. Like, we moved here in 1987. I'm 44 years old now. So I've seen a lot, and I've grown with the city. And frankly, at that age, like, you don't remember a heck of a lot before then. So 3rd grade on has been here. I left when I went to college. I went to Dartmouth.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to Dartmouth in New Hampshire my first year. Yeah. And then I ended up transferring out to the University of San Diego. And so I went there. And then after that, after being in San Diego, loved it out there. But I went into accounting. I was an accountant. So I went to work for what was Deloitte and Touche at the time, one of the big 5 accounting firms in Phoenix. Deloitte & Touche is now Deloitte, and there's not big 5 anymore. As a matter of fact, I'll probably date myself here, but if you guys remember the old Enron scandal, when Enron collapsed, its auditor, which was Arthur Andersen, went down with them. So I was in my first year of accounting was during all of that. So all the Arthur Andersen people in Phoenix, or a good portion of them, joined me at Deloitte & Touche. It's a really interesting time. Now, I hated it. The reality is, I went to school and went into that major because it was the most competitive in the business school, and those that got the best grades got the best jobs. And so I really liked that environment, and it suited me well. When I got out in the real world, I realized what a bad fit I was for the accounting profession.
So I got 2 questions, and they're not related at all. Number one, like, did your dad just watch Raising Arizona and say, like, bro, we're going? Or like what took him, what'd your dad do or your parents do for work?
Yeah, my parents. So the reason they went from Pennsylvania to Arizona, the story goes, now granted it came from my father, so you got to, divide it by 2 and subtract 6. If you get to know my dad, you'd understand. But he basically will tell you he got in his last car accident, sliding in the ice in his car, and said, that's it. And they went and visited friends in Arizona, and they saw the sun during the winter time, and they said, no ice, we're out of here. And that's how it came to be. Now, my parents were both entrepreneurs. They actually were, my dad's a pharmacist. My parents met in a pharmacy. And so they had built small independent pharmacies a time or two. And they were kind of part of that last run of the small mom and pop pharmacy. They're still out there a bit, but their last, at the tail end of their career, I think they sold to Walgreens or Walmart or one of those. And that was it. They sold a couple of the stores they had left. So, I grew up in that environment. I grew up I grew up with parents that were drug dealers.
That's awesome. So, all right. Question number 2, unrelated. Thoughts on public education? Like, because your story is a tale as old as time, right? Like, I went to college because that's what I was supposed to do. I picked a major because that's what I was supposed to do. I graduated successfully because that's what I was supposed to do. And then I woke up and going like, dude, I hate my freaking job. Like, what are your thoughts now? How do you advise? Yeah, I don't know how old your kids are, or other people come to you and go like, hey, should I go to college? What are your thoughts on public education?
Yeah, that's a really good question, one that nobody's ever asked me. So we're already off to a very different start on any podcast, and I love it. What a great question. I've got a lot of thoughts around this. I have daughters that are 11 and almost 13, and they're both in public school. And they've actually been in different alternative schooling. Acton Academy, I had them in a program called Acton that's out of Austin. Didn't work out for us, but I've toyed with different things, and I supplement a lot of their learning as well. So I have a handful of thoughts. Number one, I think that school, as important as education is, I believe that the experience that is life is also really important. I want my kids to have diversity, and I want them to have a hard time, and I want them to fail, and I want them to win. I want them to overcome. It's not to say you can't get that in all environments, but where we live, I think that the public school system's well-rounded in that respect, and the education is sound enough. Now, that being said, my job as a parent is to not leave the education solely up to the school. The school is a component of the education plan, meaning that I've got to coach and train and mentor. So like my daughters are at every event I run, or most every event I run, for two reasons. Number one, I want to give them the exposure and the education. Number two, I need it to be a tax write-off. That's a different podcast. Yeah. But I'll give you an example. Last week, we ran Built How here in Phoenix. Sarah Blakely, founder of Spanx, is the speaker. Guess who's sitting in the front row? It's my daughters. And I want them learning and being. Now, 13 and 11, did they take notes and understand it all? Of course not. But that exposure is important. So I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I do think public school system's great, but our job as parents is to influence and manufacture environments, create environments, and help these kids learn. My job, I really think, is to do everything I possibly can so that they can be contributing members of society one day down the road. Now, as it pertains to college, I'm a little indifferent in that if they want to go to college and they've got a mission and they want to specialize, they need some specialized knowledge, by all means, I'll encourage it. Or if they don't want to go because they've got a different path, or maybe they're entrepreneurial, or they have a vision, I'll vet the hell out of it, but I'll likely support that too. I mean, my wife's a dentist. It's a very specialized knowledge. If you want to become, one of my daughters wants to be a dentist, they're going to not just undergrad, but grad school.
Right.
But I built a decent real estate business, and I leverage the accounting knowledge I have from school every day. But you don't need an accounting degree necessarily. So I'm not really married to the traditional go to a 4-year college no matter what. I am married to have life experience, learn from life experience, get education, but it comes in multiple ways.
Where are you at on this, Taylor? You and I have talked about this before, and your boys are doing alternative education this year. Bennett's up at college. Like, we haven't visited this subject for a while.
Yeah, and it's great to be on this podcast with you guys, because my two boys, I've got a sophomore and a senior this year. They came to me and said, "Dad, we want to homeschool." And I said, "Well, guys, refer back to 2021 when we had forced homeschool, which was COVID. And remind me what your grades were," because in the Prince house, like I was co-valedictorian of a school where there was 50 kids. So it was a huge accomplishment. I know my kids we had a C in the house, but we had never seen anything other than a C. During COVID, we saw D's and F's. Like it was online school. CCSD had this kind of whack job COVID, like online school that we did. So when they came to me and said that they wanted to do homeschool, the initial reaction was, no way, there's not a snowball's chance we're going to do that. Well, what it evolved to is if they started a business and worked a business and stayed busy and did those hard things and, like you said, Brian, learned how to fail, learned how to learn from failures, then we would consider it. So we're now 3 weeks into homeschool. They've got a window washing business. They're killing it. They're having fun. And it's, for me, like the public schools in Nevada are great. And we've been public school guys forever. This is the first time we haven't. But we found something we like. Now, as far as college goes, where we're at this, and what I tell my kids is go to college for the experience. And if they want to be a doctor, if they want to be, be a dentist or something, I think it's different. But for for my son, for him to be up in the ecosystem of college and to be around kids that are his same age, that are doing fun things every night, that are just going and camping and doing these crazy, whatever, foam parties and like campus parties and sleeping out on the lawn, like that kind of stuff. I love that environment that he's in, and he knows, and I know that, like, if he doesn't get a degree, it's not even the real win for him in my eyes is just to go up and be a part of that experience. So we're more about experiences, and he may decide he wants to become a civil engineer while he's at college. And if he's 100% committed, then I'll support him in that. And he'll probably get out and become a short sale specialist and do something completely different. But for starters, for the experience of college, I love what it provides for young guys, young people to be around each other and just learn.
Yeah. Well, Brian, let's take this in a different direction. Taylor, that's so good. Because your boys are crushing it. They did my windows and they killed it. And I remember the quote they came up with was decent. And I was like, dude, they're making some money. So Brian, paint a picture for me. It's 2023. Rates are higher than most of us have been. You and I and Taylor, we were in when it was 7.5. I remember loan modifications at like 4.9. And I was like, dude, it's like free money, right? Like the world is over. But now we're back. Paint a picture of the agent who is failing. Like what is, like, it's because it's easy to paint success, right? Paint the picture of the agent that's failing, that you're seeing, that you're like, dude, I know this guy. He crushed it. And now he's really struggling. What does his day look like? What does his week look like? How is he operating his business? And he's freaking getting hammered.
Man, another great question. You're really kind of leveraging, I guess, the law of inversion here, where instead of saying, tell me what makes for success, why don't we analyze what makes for failure? And it's such a good way to kind of engineer or figure out exactly what we should not be doing so that we can, I really love the question. I would say that the elephant in the room, in my opinion, that it's so basic and it's almost corny, and it's the elephant in the room in my mind. When a market gets hard, we can talk about education and skills and conversion. At the end of the day, like you're going to have to work harder. Like you're just going to have to work harder. And I say that's the elephant in the room because like we always try to avoid that. Like give me the 10 things I could do instead of working our ass off. But you guys have been through different markets. I've been through different markets. I mean, I launched a career and you guys were involved. Like we were in two of the worst hit cities in the entire nation. Mm-hmm. The truth was, like, your 8-hour job was out the window and the 12-hour job, 14-hour job was just where we were at. So when you say, somebody that's going to fail or is not, things aren't going really well, maybe they are working hard, but reality is they probably are not going hard enough. And that's just a function. I mean, you can't go from 6 million sales annually, 6 million plus units, to 4 million plus annually. You're literally cutting the sides available by, 50%. Like you can't do that and expect everything to just be fine. Like I'm going to have to go double down or triple down on everything else everything I've done to make me successful. I'm going to have to go harder at those things. Like every morning I've got to wake up and say, my job today is to take someone out of Taylor's database, out of Joe's database. And every morning, Taylor and Joe got to wake up and say, I got to grab someone from Brian's database. This is I got to go figure out a way to do it. Maybe that means I got to get up earlier than Joe and Taylor. Maybe it means I got to stay later. Like, I don't want everyone sacrificing their personal world, but the reality is that's just the nature of the market. Now, by the way, we got to work a lot less in 21 and 22 if we chose. Right. And still are having success, right? This is just the ebbs and flows of the market. This is just the ebbs and flows of business. So I always start there. Like, there's not going to be a substitute for hard work. There's just not. Now, if that's the foundation, I think it goes, okay, now, like if that's where it starts, now we can talk around tactics and skills and education and all of those things.
So the number one sign of failure, and Taylor, I want to hear from you on this. Brian, in your guesstimation, the number one thing a loser's doing in today's market, and I probably shouldn't say that, the number one thing somebody who is losing is doing in today's market is assuming that they can work smart, not hard. They're avoiding doing things that they haven't had to do in the past. They're trying to outthink the market. There's an aversion to the hard work that has historically had to be, because I talk about this, I like 2 years ago, if you were doing CrossFit, you just show up to stretch and somebody would go like, hey, Taylor, how's the market? And you'd go, oh, it's crazy. It's great. And then people were like, hey, I need to sell. And it was like, so everyone's like, oh, being a realtor is freaking easy, right?
Yeah.
Taylor, what are you seeing? Because you and I went through this before. Taylor got in, we partnered up in 2005. All of a sudden, mid 2006 happens, and we're like, it's just not happening the way it used to happen. So, Taylor, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, a couple of thoughts. I love what all of us went through, because for Joe and I, we've had this conversation. The market right now is tough. It's different. Shouldn't even say tough. It's different. But the thing that we have is we have the confidence to know it's nowhere near as bad as it got back then. And we came through that. We all adapted. We all figured out short sales, bank own, all that stuff, City of Las Vegas deals, and we crushed it in that kind of tricky, different market then. Having been through that, this market excites me. The opportunity, the what's happening, the ability to know that there's so many, it's just an adapt or die mentality. And I think this morning we had an operations meeting. We were talking to our team and our team lead and some of our operations people. And it's funny what you just said, Brian, because that is the thought and the mentality that Joe and I are starting to realize is forget all the weird, whatever software systems and shiny little objects that we can chase. Let's just work. Let's take all those hours of extra sleep we got back in 2021 and save all that extra energy that we saved. And let's put in, let's just start preaching 10, 12, 14-hour days. Okay, that's the market. If you want to make six figures and beyond, and if you want to gobble up market share and position yourself for what's coming, it's just work. And work is great. It's fun. It's such a just a competitive advantage when people realize all it is work.
There's different seasons, right? I think of our careers in terms of seasons, and we had our summer vacation, and it was nice.
It was awesome.
It was great. And then fall came, and we were kind of in this transition between hot and cooling weather. And you know what? We're going to be into the winter, and we're going to have to work a little bit harder in the winter. I've been thinking, again, I think about this quote all the time. There's this great article, or I'm sorry, it's not so much an article. It discussed what this presentation done by a gentleman named E.N. Gray. He was an insurance salesman back in the 40s. And he stands up in front of this audience of life insurance salesmen in 1940 at some convention in Philadelphia. I think it's Prudential or something like that. And he stands up and he says, I found the common denominator of success. I've discovered what makes people successful. And he stands up and he says to all these fellow insurance men, the common denominator of success is forming habits out of those things that failures just don't like to do. Forming habits out of those things that failures just don't like to do. And that's one of the more powerful things I've ever heard because, Joe, you said it earlier, we're kind of reverse engineering success. Mm-hmm. Well, in using that statement, I'd say, okay, well, what do the failures not like to do in our industry? They don't want to lead generate. They don't want to work a consistent, predictable schedule. They don't want to hone their craft. They don't ask for an appointment. They don't ask for a close. They don't study the economy. I mean, we can make a laundry list of the things that the failures in our industry just don't like to do. And to me, I take that and say, that's my playbook.
Yeah.
That's my playbook.
Walk me through a conversation. So we launched our partnership with Place. So far, so great, right? We get these reports. And so all of our agents entered into the launch program 2 weeks ago, and we got a report. And I was like, I tasted a little bit of vomit in my mouth. I was like, holy crap. So to your point, I love what you said, because we can't even get into tactics and principles if you're not putting in the work, right? It's I can't critique your golf swing if you're sitting at home watching YouTube videos about golf, right? It's like, let me see you swing the club. I can't talk to you about the way you run CrossFit. You can't talk about a clean and jerk if somebody's sitting there with a PVC pipe, right? It's like, well, let's put some weight on it and see what you do. So what conversations are you having with agents that just aren't doing the work? I mean, let me rephrase that. This is the broker's desk. Somebody comes to you and says, Brian, I'm struggling. You go, well, tell me what you're doing. And then they're not doing anything.
Yeah.
How much time are you spending with people that aren't even willing to make a call or put in the work?
Yeah, I do think quite a bit around skill or will. Like, you've got to show me the will, and then we could develop the skill. So give me a guy or girl that's willing to do the work, and then it becomes my job as the team owner or the leader or the broker to skill that individual up. That's my responsibility. That's my value proposition. The dangerous guy or girl, though, is the one that's highly skilled but unwilling to do the work. And why are they dangerous? Because they're the ones that also undermine what it is you stand for, what it is you believe you put in practice, what it is, what are your standards. So I always start with like skill or will. Now, as I work my way through that, right, like I want to make it super clear, because I think a lot of agents, a lot of our peers, they don't understand. And I want to say this respectfully, like they've never really thought, like, how did I generate this deal? Like, how do I create my business? In other words, do they walk it all the way back to the lead measures that drive the lag results? See, the very first thing we all know is activity, lead generation, whatever you want to call it. I don't care what activity you do. All activity lands with at a common place, with a common metric. Conversations, contacts. Like whether you're an open house person or you phone call, you put the headset on, you dial, or you door knock. I don't care what you do. We're all driving to the same metric, which is conversations. It takes nothing but will to create conversations. Nothing but effort creates conversations. If we can't have that, I can't coach you on anything.
Well, let me ask you this, and Taylor, after Brian answers, I'd love to hear your. How much, I'm a big nature versus nurture person, right? Like I was raised in a family where, to be honest, it wasn't pretty. And I've created a cool life with, Taylor's a business partner, my wife's amazing. And but addictive behavior, lots of alcoholism, lots of family abandonment, stuff like that. So I'm obsessed with nature versus nurture. Like how much, I can't go to nurture and say like my environment created, like I learned from my ancestors how to like work hard and create businesses. So there must be something in my nature that has allowed me to do it. So what are your thoughts when it comes to effort? Because Taylor and I freaking bang our head against the wall on this one. How much of effort, like putting in the work, do you believe you can nurture someone into, versus how much does like people who do work naturally, like nature versus nurture when it comes to effort?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The reality is I could stand over someone's shoulder and they're going to ramp it up, like that level of accountability. But if I walk away, the likelihood of them of maintaining that same degree of effort may be much, much lower. So I do believe that with most individuals, there is some sort of ingrained, behavior or attribute as it pertains to effort, likely gained through genetics or upbringing or environment. I think it's really, really difficult in my experience to coach effort unless there is some deep understanding or epiphany around some motivational force, or dare I say, a why, right? Like in my experience, and I've coached an awful lot of agents and worked with a lot of people, that is something that it's not changing when they get to my team, unless again, there's something traumatic or something significant that occurs in their world. Now, I'm going to give them every opportunity to display the will. What I'm trying to focus on though is, as the leader, knowing that sure, if I stand over them, I can ramp up their performance, but I want to know how they operate in the locker room when I'm not there.
Yeah. As
a leader, like I'm going to give them every opportunity, but until they display the will, I'm reluctant to put in the time and energy to teach up the skill. Now, one thing I think is super important to mention, I do believe that as leaders, we've got to be helping them understand the old, we've all heard it, the WIFM, the WIIFM, what's in it for me? Like, I think that people, all of us, the three of us, by the way, we think in terms of WIFM all of the time. We may not articulate it that 100%. Way in our heads, but even when we got on this call today, I mean, surely I said, okay, I'm about to spend an hour with Joe and Taylor. I didn't think what's in it for me, but I did look at my calendar and say, okay, how am I going to maximize this opportunity? How do I make sure that in my limited time, we're getting value, that sort of thing. By the way, you asked the same question when you're like, I'm going to interview Brian, like, what's in it for us? You don't say it that way, but that's human nature. My point, though, in sharing this is I do think that we have to help our people, if we're leading, connect the dots between the activities and the effort that we're describing and the end result. And I think it's wrong of us to assume that they fully understand. Nice. And then bringing this full circle, like in a shifting or a changing market, we especially have to help them understand why they need to lead generate or why they have to put in more effort. Like here we are talking about 14-hour days, and some people are listening to that saying, not me. And what I really think they're saying is, I don't understand why 14-hour days equate to greater success in a down market. Why? Because they haven't had the experiences the three of us have had when we got our asses kicked in 2006 and 7 and 8.
No, I love it. Taylor, what are your thoughts? I mean, I love that. Like,
you're frozen, Joe, or maybe I'm frozen.
Nature versus nurture, helping people understand what's in it for them, helping them believe in the playbook, right? Like there's those coaches out there. I mean, it's really hard to argue right now against Andy Reid, right? He's been there with the Eagles. He's been there with the Chiefs. Like it's really hard to argue if he says, hey, do this, that you're going to get results. So what are your thoughts, Taylor, on nature versus nurture, articulating as a leader? Because I think anyone leading a team can take a lot from that, what Brian just said. Like evaluating people's effort, if you haven't appropriately painted the picture of what their effort will lead to, then it's really hard to criticize their effort if you haven't painted that WIFM picture for them.
Yeah, great way to put it. Great question. I think that there's people that'll listen to this. Well, hopefully there'll be a few people to listen to this, but I think there's people that'll listen to this and hear the 14 hours, hear the hard work, hear the, like, what it takes and get really excited. People love a challenge. I think there's people that love a challenge, and finding somebody that will hear, like, it's going to be so hard. You're going to have to make double the calls you ever made. You're going to have double the conversations, double the appointments, double the open houses. And there's somebody that's going to hold you accountable to do all of those double effort points, double effort tasks. And there's people that are going to hear that and get really excited. People that love to run marathons, people that love to do 75 hard, people that love to do these, like, memorize a whole book. Like, there's people out there that get excited about accountability and about doing hard things. And when I hear about this, the why concept that you brought up, Brian, it's like Michael Phelps, he didn't become successful when he won his 18th gold medal, or he didn't become successful when he won his first gold medal. Michael Phelps became great, and he became a success when he mentally decided that he would do whatever it took to win a gold medal. That's when he became successful. And it's like that same, I think about the prodigal son, and we always talk about when the robe was put on his shoulders and when he got to go home and be with dad and all these cool things. But he became that guy, that returning success when he was laying with the pigs. And there's that phrase in the Bible that says he came to himself. And it's that same, like, mental realization that I don't want to live with pigs. I want to do whatever it takes. Like, for him, the hardest thing to do was to go back, eat crow, look his dad in the face. And, like, when we come to that mental realization, like Michael Phelps decided, I will do whatever it takes to get to the Olympics and to win gold. And now, is everybody going to decide they want to be an Olympic gold medalist? I don't know, probably not. But I think that there's plenty of people out there that can decide, I want to be a top producer in my market. I want to be on the top 250 agents in Vegas or Phoenix or Tallahassee or Columbus, whatever. And when you mentally decide, I'm willing to do that, and you count the cost, that I'm going to work 14 hours a day if that's what it takes. I'm going to dial 200 people a day. I'm going to do 3 open houses a week. When we mentally decide and are willing to count the cost and do whatever it takes, that's greatness. And like, getting to that, people need mentorship, and they need leaders, and they need somebody to tell them, what are the tasks I need to do so that I can have the Olympic gold medal of real estate.
No, that's perfect. So Brian, let me ask you this. Somebody's laying in crap right now. They're going like, dude, I got myself into this mess, right? I mean, that's the prodigal son. He chose, right? So people are going like, all right, I picked this profession. I was sitting at the closing table. My husband turned to me and said, sweetheart, you'd be so good at this. Brian's people spent 2 hours with us and made 30 grand. You can do that. They're now sitting there going like, okay, it's not that easy. I've made this pig pen. I've got to sleep in it. What are some of the and I'm putting you on the spot, but I have a feeling you know this. What are some of the key metrics that people have to be doing to say, I want to close 2 deals a month? What does the life of a 2 deal a month closer look like? Like, what are they doing on a daily basis that they could say like, all right, Brian, write a prescription. Your dad's a pharmacist. Write a prescription for me. I got to close 2 deals a month.
Yeah, I love it. So I'll tell you where my head goes. First thing I think about is that, and something you guys know very well, I think a lot of people get into the business and they think I'm going to be my own boss and I'm going to go run my own schedule. But if you study success in this game, you guys know exactly what I'm about to say. It's the opposite of that. Like the most successful people also have what I would describe as the most predictable schedules, the most rigid schedules. I mean, I think Jocko Willink says it best when he talks about discipline being freedom or equaling freedom, right? Like the most structured individuals are the ones that end up having the most success. So I want you to be your own boss, but let's be super clear. To me, that means design your own structured schedule and have a predictable environment that you're operating in. So let's start with that. Now, what does predictable mean? Predictable in my mind, it brings us back to this activities or will-based activity that we're describing. Every single day, if you're a new agent or you're an agent that's needing to do 2 deals a month, there's a math equation for this, right? Like there's a very clear equation. And that equation is going to be around how many people must I talk to? And in talking to them, having those conversations, how many then ads to my database do I create as a result of that? And from the ads of the database, how many appointments then do I then set? And of those I set, how many do I actually go on? And then of those I go on, how many do I actually list, both buyers and sellers? So that math, those metrics, to me, it's activities lead to the conversations lead to ads of the database lead to appointments set lead to appointments gone on lead to listings taken. Those
and
five,
are you seeing any difference in today's economy? Like, is it taking more conversations to get to an appointment? Is it taking more appointments to get to a deal than?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the only thing that changes in a different market is that those that need to, in a great market or a robust market, those that need to sell and those that want to sell, those that need to buy and those that want to buy, they're all buying and selling. When the market changes, all of the wants go out the door and only the needs remain. So you're essentially cutting away, half or even more than half your opportunities. Again, this is a math equation. If you take away half your people, you've got to double your effort.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I think we overcomplicate this. So the question then becomes, how many people must I talk to generate the quantity of appointments I need based on my skill set, my conversion ability to drive to a listing? So there isn't going to be a perfect number here, but if you talk to, let's say, 10 people and you know that you can get 1 appointment out of that, or you talk to 20 people and you know you can get 2 appointments out of that, and of those 2 appointments, you can take 1 listing. And of those 1 listings, let's say in today's environment, you're selling 100% of them, which is never accurate, but let's just say for sake of calculation, it's 100%. Then you need every 20 people you talk to, you're going to get 1 listing. Right. So then the question becomes, how many listings do I want to take to get to my goals? If I want to close 2 deals a month, now you could back into the number of people you have to talk to. Again, I think we overcomplicate it, but what must we know? We can't haphazardly do it. We got to track our numbers. We've got to understand this math, and then we've got to measure it over time, and then we can see where our deficiencies lie, where we have to ramp up the activity, where we have to ramp up the skill. Sorry, Joe, go ahead.
No. It's amazing. So Taylor, talk about this because there's two types of dishonesty happening in today's market. There's people who are lying to themselves that they will be successful based on their current activity level, and they know it's not true. They know it's not true. You can't tell me somebody pulls into Burger King and gets a double Whopper with cheese and thinks like, I'm going to look better after this. You know that that's not true. Number two, there are leaders who are not having this conversation with their people of saying like, hey, just so you and I are on the same page, doing what you're currently doing is not going to issue the results. So let me ask you this, Taylor, and you have to answer, you have to be 100% spot on. Why do people lie to themselves about this stuff? Like why, in your opinion, you've been in this market for a long time, this definition of insanity, like individuals lying to themselves, leaders lying to themselves, what are we missing? What aren't people seeing with this? Because there's individuals listening to this, there's team leaders listening to this who are going like, yeah, that's our freaking problem. So yeah, how do we have that hard conversation?
Yeah, there's a lot. I think it was what's his name? Brendan Bouchard. Was he the one on the Place Call a few weeks back? Was that? Am I saying his name right? He wrote a book, super inspirational.
Taylor's feed. People may still be hearing it.
Brian, can you hear me?
Oh,
Brian?
There you go.
There he is. He's back.
Okay, sorry. I don't know why I keep losing. So we had a Place Call a few weeks back. I think it was Brandon Bouchard was on there. Do you guys remember that?
Yes.
Amazing guy. And I loved what he got into. He got into a little bit of this, and he talked about why we do dumb stuff, he got into a little bit with addictions and bad habits and stuff. And one of the things that he said that stuck with me and I've used quite a bit is just when there's something in our life that's uncomfortable, which uncomfortable may be getting on the dialer, making calls, and maybe talking face to face with somebody, and maybe setting up open house signs. When there's something in our life that's uncomfortable and we don't want to face it, we go to the thing that is very comfortable, which is scrolling Instagram or, picking up a bottle and just whatever it is. It could be extreme, it could be minimal. But so to answer your question on that, why people, I think that's one reason is sometimes we're not willing to face the uncomfortable because our why is not big enough. But the other thought is like, I love the math. Brian brought this up, like the math equation. It's very hard to argue with math. It's very hard when somebody says, here's an equation, and if you add up these numbers, it'll equal this. It's very hard for them to go back and find variances and reasons where in some instances this will work and in some it won't because it's math. We could look at green eggs and ham and say there's a million reasons why people may not like green eggs with ham or why Bob and Sue didn't, run this way down the road. But when it comes to math, you cannot argue that. So I think when we convert it to math over feelings and when we look at that over emotions and we look at values over emotions, I think that we can have really good conversations with our people about what they're doing and what they're not doing. And if they really want to close 2 deals a month, it's just a simple values over feelings. And if they value 2 deals a month over the feeling of this is hard and I feel sick and I feel tired and I feel bored and I feel unsuccessful and I feel like if we take out the word feel and replace that with the value of the math equation, that what's proven across multiple markets, then I think we can have really good conversations with our team leaders and with our team members.
So Brian, talk about this for a second. Taylor, I love that. It's not Shakira's hips, right? If we look at what doesn't lie, it's actually the scale and the mirror. Those are the two things that don't lie. Or if you're an athlete, it's your actual performance, right? It's not, to Taylor's point, it's not how you feel walking into the gym. It's like, can you lift the weight? Can you do the work? What then is the scale of our real estate business? Because it can't be closings because it's too late at that point, right? Like, what is the daily scale that people should be stepping on in their real estate business that will tell them if they're going to eventually get the results they want?
First of all, I'm still trying to process how you just worked Shakira in there and said her hips and then just rolled with it like cool. I mean, that was smooth. I got to give it to you, man.
Taylor's a big Shakira fan. You make sure every conversation we have, Taylor works in Shakira once.
The scale in the mirror, it's not Shakira's hips. Oh my God. Yeah. So I'll tell you, a game changer for me was, in my mind, the day I discovered that the vast majority of us do a really poor job defining whether we win or lose the day. So for instance, And the universal metric, I do believe, is conversations if you know your conversion rates. Like if you know how many people you have to talk to, I don't care about your mechanism of lead generation. If you can narrow it down to contacts/conversations, like that to me could be your win the day metric. And here's why winning the day matters so much to me. Let's say Taylor decides based on his conversion rates that he needs to converse with 8 people a day. Now he knows his math. He knows that 8 people lead to a certain quantity of ads at the database. And from that, he creates appointments and goes on those appointments and takes the listings, and those listings lead to closings. If he understands the math, then he could define exactly what he needs to do every day. And again, I believe that metric's probably conversations. Now, let's say he decides that 8 is that number. And today, Taylor is going to go hold an open house. He knows 8 is winning the day. He's going to go hold an open house. He goes and holds that open house, and 5 people show up. Now, it's come time to close the open house. What does Taylor do? Now, if Taylor doesn't know what winning the day entails, then he's going to shut up, close the open house. He's going to leave. He's going to go home. And he's going to say, I think I had a good day. But see, not Taylor. Taylor knows that in order to win the day, he's got to get 8. So what does he do? He can either keep that open house open if the seller allows for it. He can go door knock. He can go get on the phone. But Taylor knows in order to get a W, he's got to get to 8. It drives his actions for that day. Now, what I tell people all the time is, listen, I don't need you to win every single day. I just need you to get me to the playoffs. So if you take a month and there's, say, 20 business days, right? What would the playoffs be? I don't know, maybe 12-8, right? Like 12 or maybe 11-9, maybe 13-7. A winning record gets me to the playoffs. And if you get me to the playoffs, what does that mean? It means we have a shot at the championship. And for the vast majority of agents, the championship is going to be whatever financial goal they made for themselves. That's the championship. So win the day, get a win more often than you get a loss, get into the playoffs and win the championship. The key takeaway here, though, is if I went to you today, if you're listening right now, and I said to you at the end of your day, did you win the day or did you lose the day? How would you answer that question? My experience, most people would answer it based on emotion or subjectivity. Very few are objective in their answer. Very few said, you know what? 12 contacts was my goal today, and I got 14. I got a W.
Yeah.
1 appointment was my goal today. 1 appointment set was my goal today. I hit it. I got a W. Very few people are able to articulate that, but I promise you that if you get that degree of clarity and you stack enough wins, more wins than you have losses, you get to the playoffs, you got a shot at the title.
Well, what I love about what you just said is it gives, if people listen to the past hour and they take nothing away from it, as an individual or as a team leader, I think that scale, that daily measurement is conversations. It is possible to attempt conversations and still, you could attempt thousands a day on quadruple dialers and break every SEC law and all that stuff, FCC, whatever. And you could still lose because if you're not having conversations, it's impossible to fix anything. Getting answer machine after answer machine after answer machine, you could do that and still not improve. But to your point, the reason why conversations win the day is because as a team leader, you can coach, say this better. But it's impossible to coach. You didn't say anything because you had 0 conversation.
That's exactly right. That's exactly
so
right.
We've got 2 minutes, Brian. And then what? Like, what are we looking at? What for you read a lot, you talk to a lot of really smart people. What are we in for? Like, how long is this winter? It seems like the key metric we have to look at is interest rates. What are you thinking? And obviously we can all be wrong and all that fun stuff, but when are we going to get back to, if ever, a 2020 transaction volume or a 2021 transaction volume? Is it all interest rates? What are we in for?
Yeah, of course we don't have the crystal ball, and I'll probably be wrong, but I'll tell you exactly where my head's at right now. I think we're in for the next 6 to 12 months are going to be a grind. I think if you recall the last winter, November, December, January, February, March, it was a little bit troubling. It was difficult. spring came around, summer came around, things improved. I think that remember those times, you're likely to go through something very similar, if not even a little bit tighter, which means buckle down. Now, those who stay, those who survive will thrive. So just plan accordingly. This is going to shake out. The industry is going to be a little different when all is said and done. I do think interest rates remain high for a while. And then I believe, and Goldman Sachs believes, starting next year, we'll start to see them creep back down. I don't think we're going to go through a full-fledged recession. I know Fannie Mae just recently said something different. But what I'm looking at, I don't think we're going through that. But I do think we're in for some trying times. I think we got another 12 months before we're going to feel like, I don't know if we're going back to 2020, but where we feel a little bit more stable in our consistency of our business and income level.
So what's the opportunity then? So Brian and then Taylor, you could end it for us. What's the opportunity? Because if Taylor and I look back at 06 and 07, we're like, dude, that was freaking rough. And we succeeded and we missed out on a ton of opportunity. Hindsight, we should have gone to grandmas and uncles and bought homes ad nauseum and just loaded up the inventory and just sat on homes for 5 years. Right. So every market, every challenge has enormous opportunity. So what are you looking at as far as opportunity zones with the market being a little bit harder for people to execute on?
Well, as a real estate salesperson, I think if you've ever, gone after your SOI, you're going to have to deepen those relationships times 10, because they're getting attacked by everybody right now. So you have to become the guy or girl attached to them. You've got to be the leader. You go to your attorney, you want to be led. You go to your doctor, you want to be led. What I want for my SOI is when they go to me, their realtor, I just need to lead them in whatever direction. I got to deepen relationships. So I think we've got to build a moat around our SOI. From an investment standpoint, I'll tell you, I think there's always great opportunities in the traditional paths we've all taken. I am watching the commercial market pretty closely right now with the trillions of dollars of loans, about the reset. I do think that in the next 6 to 12 months, the three of us are probably going to get into the commercial space a little deeper than we have been. So I'm watching that pretty closely. There's a lot of other things, but I know we're just about out of time, but there's a lot of other things on my mind, but those are two big areas of focus.
What about you, Taylor? What do you think? Where's the opportunity lie? What are we working on?
Well, so I would just say, this has been amazing. If I was watching this podcast, my takeaway would be the opportunity is if I'm willing to work, if I'm willing to fall in love with the process, if I'm willing to trust that work will prevail, that's the opportunity. I think that is the secret sauce. Like whatever people are doing right now, if they decided they want to stay in real estate, then are they willing to put in extra hours, extra time? Are they willing to go extra deep on their SOI? Are they willing to double down on marketing? Whatever it is that they're doing, are they willing to do more of it? That would be the 100% takeaway I would get from this. And I would have an honest conversation with myself and see, am I willing? My answer is yes. Like, Brian, you've inspired me. I've heard things like that I've heard you say before, but I heard them today in different ways that they just resounded even more. It comes in a perfect time for our business, a perfect time that we're trying, we're deciding like, what are we going to do? What's our opportunity? So for me, the big, massive takeaway is we're going to work. We're going to be smart. We're going to, try to do it right. We're going to try to come up with new ways of doing certain things, but we are going to go all in on just work and just put in the effort and prove that we haven't gotten so far up to one level that we're done working and just getting our hands dirty and getting in the trenches. And I'm excited just to be able to outperform and fall in love with the process.
Yep.
Well, Brian, we're grateful to be in your world. As Taylor and I evaluated the opportunity that Place presented, you were a big reason why we got so excited about this, taking our business and partnering with Place. Historically speaking, I think Taylor and I have benefited greatly from being around smart people. There's a ignorant and immature pride, to your point, and just like, I'm going to do it all myself. I'm going to write my own schedule. I'm going to fix everything myself. And then there's this maturation process where you go like, you know what I want to do? I just want to be in a room with really smart people who say, hey, do this and you're going to crush it. And then it's fun to do that and then crush it. And so you're one of those, like, we're in a foxhole and we're just grateful you're there. How do people get in touch with you? What's the best way to get a little bit of Brian Gubernick in their world?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. First of all, thank you for all those kind words. I can tell you, I'm pretty darn excited about our partnership. I know Ben and Chris and everybody over at Place is ecstatic. So thank you guys for the trust and faith, and it's going to be a fun journey. As far as connecting with me, anybody can email me at any time. It's brian@place.com, BRIAN @place.com. And after listening to Joe and Taylor's podcast on repeat multiple times, every episode, of course, as they come out, venture over to my podcast as well. It's just called No Days Off with Brian Gubernick. I think there's a couple decent things there, so they can find me there as well, Joe.
Love it. Okay, guys, thanks for tuning in. We're going to be doing this every single week. So we wanted to start on a high note.